And there we go.
Well, Oli, if that doesn't put you in the festive spirit, what will put you in the festive spirit?
It makes me feel like I want a Coca-Cola, which is odd because I don't want a Coca-Cola, but I feel like they've got that. Yeah, they've got those little tentacles into me. Either that, or I'm watching a BBC ident. Yeah, weird.
Well, it's very professional. I'll applaud that. I do like it. And,
Absolutely. Yeah. I fully agree. So, how's your week been, Brendan?
Well, a disrupted week, as in we had a festivo in the middle of it, just about on Tuesday. So I was going to ask, how was your Noche de Velitas? Did you do anything traditionally Colombian, or did you avoid it?
No, I pretended I still had COVID and couldn't go out.
Okay.
So, I mean, you might as well use these things, for their advantage, right? But by the way, the virus has passed. I haven't had any symptoms since we last spoke, actually. So, yeah, absolutely.
And it seems as if it can't be contracted via Zoom because I'm pretty okay anyway. So,
not all heroes wear capes, Brendan.
Exactly. Anyway, let's get on with things because we do have a jam-packed show and coming up on what is, remember, Colombia's only live and interactive English language chat show. We'll be looking back on the year that was 2020. And it's fair to say there was little 2020 vision as to what was going to befall us when we said adios to 2019. Of course, coronavirus has dominated the discourse, even managing to trump Donald J. Trump. So how has this pandemic year been for Colombia? We'll give you our thoughts on the highlights and the lowlights, on those who may have actually seen their lot improve and those who certainly haven't. From politics and protests to the economy and education, we'll touch on many aspects. As ever, we do want to hear from you. What has been your standout moment over these last 12 months in whatever sphere of life? Let us know by using the live comment facility right now, or if you're watching this recorded, you can send a message via the medium on which you're viewing us, or simply send a tweet to everybody's favorite newspaper at Bogotá Post. But before we get into that, it's our regular take on the week's news. And Oli, Colombia's Christmas wind down, as we were mentioning at the top of the program, has kicked in somewhat after what was, in some areas of Bogotá in any case, especially around my neck of the woods here, a lively Noche de los Velitas last Monday night. Indeed, it appears that it was a little too lively for the city's powers that be, with tonight's planned ciclovia nocturna cancelled. I'm sure you had your bike ready to go out. But is that a smart move from the mayor's office, or a bit overly cautious?
Hard to know, Brendan. I mean, I was a little bit surprised, honestly, when they announced this about a month ago, because those nocturnal ciclovias, they're a bit of an unusual thing. They're a bit sort of weird in that they attract a lot of crime. They attract a lot of rowdiness and agglomerations, as they like to term it here. So it was a bit of a surprising declaration in the first place. I'm not all that surprised that it's been cancelled. I'm willing to say Claudia's got more information than we have. She probably knows what she's doing. I think she's built up, we'll talk about this, I think, later when we talk about the year. I think she's built up enough capital that we can trust her at this point. But the really big question is this going to be repeated in other things? Are we going to see shopping centres closed down? Are we going to see restrictions on times, which seems to me very counterproductive in certain zones? Might we even see another lockdown?
Ooh, I don't think they contemplated a lockdown before Christmas. Of course, Bogotá,
I don't know.
Yeah, I won't say it's an anomaly, but the thing is, leading up to the 24th, you would expect an exodus from the city of already what it is already a fairly quiet city compared to normal times. At best, is it operating at 70%? Although, having said that, I've noticed a lot more traffic on the autopista from the north going south the last 10 days or so. So there seems to be a lot more traffic.
I went up to Usaken today, and I would say the traffic up there seems like normal. Which is in stark contrast to down here, where it's very much at 50%, 70%.
Yeah, but then I was once again at Migracion yesterday. That saga's almost
Of course
coming
you were.
to an end. Yeah, it was my weekly visit to Migracion, Colombia. But no, finally it is coming to an end. But like getting down there, yeah, traffic was okay. I went on the bike, but around Calle Cien and that it was quiet. Like it wasn't your normal kind of bustling Bogota of people heading to offices. Because of course people aren't working in their, especially in the offices around that part of town. They're not working in their offices. The majority are working from
Well,
home.
I mean, I have to say I had a completely different experience today coming up. I would say from about 72, it was pretty heavy traffic
But
coming
that's the
up the
traffic. But
Septimus
what about
towards
the
us.
people on the street? Did you?
Oh, no. No, not a great deal. No.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, the traffic seems busy and seems like at almost
Yes. Yeah,
normal
yeah, that's what I was
levels.
talking about, yeah.
Yeah, but then the people on the street. So I don't know. Like, what are they doing? Where are they driving?
Which is odd, actually, because it's very much the opposite here where I live. It's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. People walking around on the streets is absolutely as it ever was. What we have a lot less of is traffic moving through the zone.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting one. But in terms of the another lockdown, like, I don't think that's even on the table
No.
for Christmas. Yeah, what they might
But
do is what we
the
see.
question. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, okay, if we say maybe 50% of the city leaves and goes to their I was going to say summer retreats, but their holiday retreats and their fincas or whatever, and the likes of Hiro Dot and Carmen de Piccola and all those areas close to the south of Bogota, like coming back, and we have a city that's getting back to life, schools coming back in perhaps end of January, February, and the vaccine still won't be rolled out. I mean, we'll probably wait another 6 months before that kicks into gear. So, yeah.
Very sceptical of you there, Brendan. Our president has announced that it will be in the first semester of 2020.
Yeah,
Why would you doubt his record of competence?
I'll just say one little phrase: Colombian time. No, well, we shall see. We shall see. Of course, there was another little battle.
So I would love it. By the way, I would just love it if Duque comes out in a press conference and just say, "No, ahorita." They say, "Well, when's the vaccine ready?" You just go, "No, ahora, sí, yeah." That would be brilliant. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, Jago or whatever. Yeah, it's already here. It's not. Okay, no, but I was going to say we had another little battle between Claudia Lopez and the health minister today over that vaccine, over a law.
Yeah, this seems like It seems like a battle that doesn't make any sense. Claudia Lopez is saying that the law is not necessary. The health minister is saying we need to pass a law. I mean, generally, I would agree with Claudia. Generally speaking, having more laws is not a good thing. Whereas enforcing the laws that we already have is probably a good idea. Politicians aren't usually keen on that, though. But it just seems to be like a real waste of I mean, I don't understand what the point of this argument is, and I suspect all sides would just be better off focusing on what their day job is meant to be, frankly.
Yeah, and whenever it does, it is available, making sure that it gets to those who need it the most, first and foremost. But anyway, we shall watch this space. Speaking of politics and politicians, though, our defense minister was in some rather bizarre story. Which appeared.
Or is it a story? I mean, what is going on with this?
To be honest, I tried to understand it. I was reading the Saman article, which was published or uploaded, I should say, earlier today. As best as I could understand, is that he didn't follow proper procedure when he was giving a police official upgrading his title or whatever, a promotion. So And then so this judge, some obscure judge from where is it, Caldas or?
Oh, for God's sake, don't name him. Because I mean, this is why he's doing this, presumably. No, but I mean, just let's make sure that we don't identify him. Because frankly, anybody who's doing this to get some publicity, I think we have a moral duty not to give them that publicity.
Well, I mean, if it was something very grave, yeah, fair enough. But it just seems again like a bit of a non-story, like the little battle.
I mean, I think the thing that got me, you said the same thing, but I mean, I read that headline and I thought, well, my Spanish can't be right here. I must be making a mistake. Surely he means he will be arrested in a maximum of 3 days, And then I was like, but it does, I mean, the language seems to suggest he should be imprisoned for 3 days.
And
I think that's what it seemed. Yeah, have we got this right? Because it does seem to say send him to prison for 3 days, which just seems weirdly specific and also utterly trivial.
And fine him to minimum salaries as well, which I'm sure he's sweating about
when he earns 30 a month. I mean, it's ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous.
I mean, we're talking about the lawyer. I don't know if you've probably noticed this here as well, but you meet a lot of abogadas in this country. Like every second person says, I'm an abogado. Like in our countries, you meet a lawyer or a solicitor. And okay, I don't want to sound haughty about this, but these are people who have had a high level of education and would be very well respected in their communities, generally across the board, I would say. And here it's like you pick 10 packets of Frito-Lay or whatever and become a lawyer. It seems that's what it seems like.
That would be a great promotion. One thing I would say, Brendan, is that not everybody can work in a panaderia and be earning 5 million a month, as per Duque's claim. Was it 5? No, 2 million. I think he claimed panaderia workers were on. No, I think what this comes from is there's a bit of a cultural problem here. I think, in that I think the word abogado in Colombia really refers to, it's a bit like maestro. Abogado really refers to people we would often call, like, it's certainly not barristers. It would, I think, encompass kind of legal secretaries and a lot of people like that.
Yeah, I guess like maybe I remember when I was doing my undergrad, my arts degree, and one of the subjects you could pick was legal studies. So perhaps somebody who's studied legal studies, but you're not exactly a lawyer or a solicitor or anything.
Yes, exactly. Yes, you might sort of, I'm not fully au fait with legal people, but I think that's the reason for the confusion. Also, this bizarre thing, and I think I've talked about this before. I find it really weird that a lot of Colombians will refer to themselves as being whatever they studied. And you see, I would never, ever, I read political science, but I would never, ever refer to myself as a political scientist. I mean, no way. And it always makes me laugh because I see my students graduate from the Comunicación Social and Periodismo faculty. And they graduate and they say, oh, now I'm a journalist. And I kind of go, no, you're not. Now you're somebody with a piece of paper. When you're published, you'll be a journalist. And, by the way, if you're published before you get your piece of paper, you're already a journalist. And I find it really bizarre. So students will tell me with a straight face that somebody doing regional radio in, let's say, Arauca is not a journalist because they haven't been to university. Yet they will call themselves a journalist because they've got a piece of paper saying they are. And I find that absolutely bizarre. I can't get my head around it. So that might also explain some other abogados.
Yeah, as you said, it is the culture thing here as well, where that piece of paper is given far more weight than what actually somebody can do. Which is bizarre. To be honest, on certain dating applications, I've noticed that people do write, as you say, like, "Oh, I'm a periodist" or whatever, and then you kind of go, "No, like, for what station do you?"
Who do you write for? Yeah.
Yeah, but there's like, well, no, I didn't study. Anyway, guys, by the way, of course, we do want to hear from you. Do write using the live comment facility. We are going to be giving our thoughts on what was a very interesting year, to say the least, 2020, reviewing how it has been for Colombia in all walks of life. But just one other story. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke, there was more fanfare anyway about the Metro de Bogotá. That the sod was turned. I know you don't like that phrase. How do you say it? Breaking ground ceremony. Yes. So officially, construction started on Bogotá's long-awaited, well-overdue metro, or whatever you want to call it, monorail perhaps. But the man leading that project has walked away from it, which seems, again, rather, we've had a few bizarre stories today, but that's seems weird. Why now, when it would seem all the hard work is done? Well,
it does seem odd, doesn't it? And what I think what's really odd about this is that he appears to be parting on fairly good terms for very little reason. So, I mean, outwardly, this looks really civilized. It's just a man saying, I'm kind of fed up with the constant changes of direction. He referenced the fact that this has gone under 2 presidents and 2 mayors, and they've all stuck their oar in and blah blah blah. But as you say, it does seem like it would have made more sense to resign over that issue, when one of those changes came in, when he said, "Oh, look, now it's been Santos and Duque and Peñalosa, now's the time to go." But a year after Claudia Lopez, the most recent change coming in, seems odd. But it does seem to be a pretty smooth transition. He just seems to be stepping down. Even the announcement was odd, that they said on Thursday he's going to resign. And you thought, that's odd. Normally when somebody says, "Oh, on Thursday he's going to be resigning," you think, "Oh, that's a leak. But this was officially announced." It just seems bizarre. And it does make you wonder, Brendan, maybe, we're all a bit suspicious after living in Colombia for a while and seeing how politics operates all around the world. It does make you wonder if there's something underneath this, whether that's, whatever it might be. But it does make you sort of suspect there might be something a bit more underneath it.
I read an article, a question and answers interview that he had in El Tiempo about a month ago, whenever that story was, when they started. And like, one of the things that struck me in that, because I tried to contact him afterwards, seeing would he be interested in a podcast chat, but he said that there were long nights, long days to get to this stage, and now there was like a relief that finally work started. And then he walks away. So something doesn't match up. So yeah, that's why you're kind of going, all right, there's something, I smell a rat here, but well, we'll see. Maybe it is all very innocent and he's just had enough and said, yeah, let somebody else lead this project forward.
I have to say, I mean, I've got to be honest, Brendan, I've often thought, if I was a fabulously wealthy Colombian, although I suppose this is the mentality, but anyway, I've often thought, if I was a particularly
wealthy Englishman.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, I think I would be in the bottom 20% of earners at the moment. Anyway, look, if I was fabulously wealthy, I've often thought I would just be done, buy a house in Santa Marta, and just forget about working for the rest of my life. Invest a bit of money. Yeah, just go and sit on a beach.
Yeah, rent out a few apartments, condominios, or whatever they call them in the States, and no,
I wouldn't be mucking about, kind of trying to. I mean, I would say running the Bogotá Metro is probably very much like trying to herd butterflies. So,
it's duty, Ollie. You got to work for patriotic duty as well. Yeah, he's in love with his city. Anyway, well, not now. He's left it to somebody else to get involved with. But let's look at the year that was, as we said, and that is running down in the ticker here, a year that certainly was like no other. We'll probably start with politics. A good place to start. You mentioned Claudia Lopez coming up to her first year in office.
Well, can I just jump in there? Because something you said, I think let's throw it out to our listeners. Because you mentioned this yesterday when we were doing the planning for the show, and I really like that idea. I think because you said, what was the news in January? And I'm racking my brains. Colombia is a nightmare, I think, at the best of times to remember what's been in the news, because there's so much news and the news cycles turn over so fast. But yeah, anyone out there listening, what was the news in January? And what did you expect from the year? What were you expecting the year to be like, in January?
Yeah, by the way, I just see, because these comments didn't appear, and I see Angela's been on to us, because before we move on, yeah, exactly. But she's saying there's no differentiation between barristers and solicitors, lawyers major in different, very specific areas, labour, administration, okay, or in no area at all. Good stuff. And Checho's looking for subtitles. That could be interesting if we're doing as we go subtitles between an Irishman and a Bristolian.
Well, we could both ham up our accents. We could go the other way.
Oh yeah, if you want me to speak really like somebody from the west of Ireland and put a H after every S, as in Jesus Christ, that could be interesting. Anyway, what happened in January?
Anyway, yes. How long we go?
January, if you remember, I will just say I do recall on the 1st of January, slightly hungover. That's when Claudia was inaugurated as mayor.
Riding in on her bicycle. Do you remember that?
Well, I remember it was a very hot day anyway, and I was going for the cure for 1 or 2 after the celebrations on the 31st. I
was in Medellin. We were on our way to Choco, but I do seem to remember. I'm sure I'm not making this up. Didn't Claudia Lopez cycle in and have her inauguration ceremony in the Parque Simón Bolívar? I think.
Yeah, it was certainly. Yeah, it was in Parque Simón Bolívar. I was watching it on TV, but I don't remember her cycling in. Paola's been on her memories of January. That the news. Yeah, well, it wouldn't be a show without Paola Andrea writing in. Thanks, Paola. We do appreciate it, of course. But yeah, it was. Yeah, the news was just emerging, and I think maybe if we'd acted decisively in January, we might have stopped an awful lot of trouble. But anyway, that's something we are going to be talking about. But let's kind of sum up, because there's obviously been an ongoing theme in this is episode number 16 of this show, and we've been nearly every week mentioning the rows between the mayor's office and the president and stuff like that. Claudia's first year, obviously, like everyone around the world, she wasn't expecting to be dealing with a global pandemic. How would you, can I ask that cliched question, out of 10, what would you give her, Ollie?
Out of 10, I'd probably be going. Again, it's so hard coloured, isn't it? I'd probably say 7 or 8, something like that. I think she started off with a few missteps, that maybe were a bit problematic. I don't think she handled the start of COVID particularly well. I think she's really batted fantastically at as we go through the batsmen, and I think she's done very well. I think in the past, let's say 6 months or so, and Bogotá seems to be doing better than some other places.
Yeah, I just one thing that now does come to mind, because in the early days, I think both of us in various social media posts, perhaps, and in articles, although I didn't write an article about it, but we weren't exactly singing her praises. But I do recall all candidates. I'm pretty sure all candidates for the mayor's office last year, they all said that they would not raise the Transmilenio fare, Claudia Lopez included, and within her first month in office, the fare goes up. So
hang on. Didn't they say they wouldn't raise it above inflation?
Well, I'm just reading what they have in their pamphlets, and it's like, we will not increase, so, okay, maybe I'm guilty of not delving deeper into it, but I'm just going, okay, if it's on a bullet point thing, the fare won't go up. Well, in the first 12 months, thanks. That's what I
do find that the Transmilenio price rise, we get this every year, and it's something I find very odd, because it generally goes up by inflation or sometimes just below inflation, which to me seems entirely reasonable. I can't see any reason. I understand absolutely that you might say, well, okay, we think it's an overpriced service, so we're going to bring the price down. That's fine. But it seems to me odd that once you've got the price at the level you think is right, well, of course, there's never any demonstrations against any of the private companies, fully private companies, that also put their prices up by 5% every year. Everything in Exeter, everything in Caruja, everything in Deuna, blah, 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 everything's going up by 5% on average. That's how inflation works. It would be very odd if the Transmilenio didn't do this, yet every year the Transmilenio gets masses of criticism and nobody else does. Except, of course, by the way, beer, which seems to obey no pricing rules in Bogotá in Colombia that I can work out. Seems to have been about 2 to 3 mil forever.
Yeah, and not just beer. Like we talked, I think, in one of our earlier episodes when we were talking about shopping in Colombia, milk has actually is cheaper today than it was 10 years ago. Now, Deuna and Justo y Bueno and Ara, I think, have played a big part in that. But like a litre of milk now is cheaper today than it was when I first came here. And also avena, oatmeal. That was rather expensive when I first came here. But again, along came your low-cost supermarkets and it changed that. So certain things, there are a few things. And actually, thankfully for me, a lot of the things that I buy are nearly cheaper today than they were.
Oat milk's a great example. I've switched to making oat milk because I've decided I don't want to be part of the torture of cows anymore. So milk doesn't affect me, but oats being cheaper, definitely very positive. Yeah.
Okay, just thanks, Walter, for writing in. That's Walter with a H there. Okay, Walter Suarez. One that Oli will like, of course. Yeah, we were talking back in January about Brexit. We're still talking about Brexit.
Yeah, still hasn't happened. Well, it has happened, but the transition period's still not over, and a deal still hasn't been. This actually, coming back to Colombian, because we do want to keep this, I think, focused on Colombia. But I think, Brendan, one of the things that always gives me a chuckle is when I'm talking to Colombians and they say, politics here is so disorganized. And I say, yep, I agree. And they say, not like in your country, it's all so organized. And I say, we had a vote to leave the European Union 5 years ago, and it still hasn't been, the details haven't been hammered out. After 5 years of negotiation, we still don't know what this really means. It's just incredible.
Yeah, so you're negotiations of 5 years. That's basically 1/10 of the length of time you were in the union. So, as somebody said the other day, imagine if Scotland votes to leave a 300-year union. How long are the negotiations going to take for that? But as you said, we won't get too much into international politics. That's for another day.
And worth pointing out, by the way, it still actually hasn't been agreed. After these 5 years, nothing's actually been agreed. In fact, there's a much better chance that we're just simply going to crash out in a couple of weeks. Bizarre.
Yeah, well, you're good at crashing out of Europe in football tournaments anyway. After a dramatic... okay, let's move on. But I want to come back to Claudia, because you said, maybe didn't handle herself terribly well the first couple of months with coronavirus. And I think one of the reasons, but she shares this with practically most of the richer Western world, that there wasn't a coherent strategy. It just kind of seemed a lot of arbitrary kind of stuff. And what could you do? People were confused. Your impar cedulas, which, okay, might have worked in the end, but it seemed a little bit chaotic. In the end, we seem to have settled for a lockdown light where people were left more or less, okay, here are the rules, here are the guidance, wear your face mask, social distance, and we'll trust you to do all that. And that's kind of where we're at now, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons that people are and continue to criticize, people were criticizing Claudia there, I think you've got a lot fewer excuses. China obviously received it first. They had to do something, in the instant and fly by night and, do regulation on the hoof and that sort of thing. To a degree, that was the same in Europe. It was a surprise when it arrived in Italy and Spain, etc. It was a surprise how quickly it took off. But really, I think the excuses have run out by the time you get as far over as Colombia, in that they've seen responses in other countries. They should really have been planning for it a little bit ahead. They don't have the excuse of being surprised in a way I think that some other countries did.
But do you think they get a pass, emerging market countries, for the very reason that they are emerging market? Well, people will probably laugh now who know me. I obviously interviewed Neil Ferguson earlier this year. That was one of the things he said in my podcast, that Colombia just didn't have the capacity to do the smart measures like a Taiwan or a South Korea.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something Colombians are often really guilty of, is that they judge or they kind of criticize the Colombian state for not doing something that, frankly, much richer countries have ballsed up massively. Let's not forget that, Colombia's still got a death rate much lower per million people from COVID than some very much richer countries who have a great deal more resources to deal with it, not only in terms of the health system, but also in the stress that they can put onto their economies.
I will add something, Oli, though, because we're very close to the event as well. This is one thing, okay, we're having a review of 2020, but in terms of COVID and how it was managed and the deaths, everything, this is something in, future historians will be looking back and will judge us how good or bad we performed. It's difficult when you're right in the middle of it and the emotions are still raw as well, and who did best and what was at play. You look at the United States, but is that down to lifestyle? Are there health issues there? They talk about it affecting more vulnerable communities at large. So you would imagine maybe that is an issue, that not eating well, not exercising well, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot in it. If we move off Claudia Lopez, though, and you give her the 70% rating, which is not too bad, you'll probably get a Christmas card for that one now. Duque, he wouldn't get as high a rating, I'm guessing, from Ollie Pritchard.
I don't think that's entirely fair. As we said before, Colombia's response to COVID, which I think is going to be what this year is defined by, let's be honest. Colombia's response to COVID, I think, has been generally better than you probably could have expected, in that, yes, it wasn't, Taiwan or whatever, but equally it wasn't a complete, we didn't have a Manaus or Guayaquil situation. So I think Colombia not reacting too badly to coronavirus probably reflects well on Duque, even if you do have to wonder that probably it's happened despite his mumbling about. Other than that, look, I'm not President Duque's biggest fan, but I wouldn't say he's done particularly badly this year.
Okay. By the way, we appreciate people taking the time to write in. So Walter just having a joke about the 50 years that, the UK was in the EU. The Bogotá tram metro has also been 50 years in the making. So,
which that's not entirely fair. Again, I would say in that it hasn't been one continuous project over 50 years. It's been kind of a recurring idea. I mean, if you want to talk about that, there's a tram system in my hometown of Bristol has been mooted for about the past 150 years and has never come to fruition. So,
yeah, it's fair. Like, it's really only in the last maybe 10 years that serious thought's been put into it, because they launched the Transmillennium at the turn of the millennium, so that was the kind of big project at that time. Sticking with politics, though, we've kind of had the starting gun, you could say, has been shot in the race for the Palacio de Nariño in 2022. Early indications were that this could be a Fajardo election to win, but he's got himself into a little bit of bother now.
Yeah, I mean, he might be implicated in Hidroituango, which, I don't think anybody's going to come out of that looking particularly good. Of course, anything from that, prosecutions and won't take place until 2022. There won't be a proper, the investigation's going to take a long time. 2022, 2023, I can't remember when they said exactly that they're going to file, but it does look convenient. What's also interesting is, of course,
23.
23, yeah. I do find it very. Oh, sorry, got a visitor here. I do find it very bizarre that, of course, consequences aren't always a big thing. I'm always surprised at how much you can be implicated in scandal in Colombia, and it doesn't seem to affect people's careers that much. But yeah, absolutely. What you're saying about jostling for position, yeah, we're starting to see noises from people who we expect to run, so Petro and Fajardo, but also there's a few other people, putting their names forward, shall we say. Of course. Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Who's going to be the Centro Democratico candidate? Because whoever that is going to come in with an enormous party sort of machine behind them. Yeah,
that will be interesting. Of course, this year as well, and it ties in kind of to what Paula is writing about COVID Friday and the coverage that got all over the world. Was it all over the world? I'm not sure, but it might have been mentioned in some international press. But of course, we had some a violent explosion of protests, Ollie, in the wake of a very sad death, kind of mimicking in a sense or similar to what we saw in the summer in the United States with Floyd. Was it the black guy who was killed by the police?
George Floyd.
George Floyd, yeah, and Javier Ordóñez, who was basically tasered to death by police here. So a violent explosion then of protests, but then they almost disappeared as quickly as they erupted.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I found that whole week in September, well, it wasn't even a week, was it? As you say, I mean, if you think about what happened last year, where we had kind of similar sort of bizarre scenes, but that was tiny in comparison. Whereas here you're talking about 11 deaths overall. That's a lot. We're talking about police firing fairly undetermined rounds at civilians. People who are people who we're not really sure who they are, who in many cases appear on videos, appear to be working with the police. Again, the veracity of these videos is always a nightmare to check out. Just because you've seen a video on Facebook doesn't necessarily mean, or on WhatsApp, whatever, doesn't necessarily mean it happened that night. It doesn't necessarily mean it was Bogota, etc. I did see a couple of videos which clearly featured Chilean carabineros. So some of these were definitely false. I saw a picture today a friend sent me that seemed to show like a Bogotá policeman with an AK-47. Obviously, that's been doctored, but actually, what's really worrying about this is that the truth behind this is extremely disturbing. That, we appear to have people working inclusion with security forces, people who are unmarked, people who appear to have ballistic weapons, and of course, those people were circulating. Of that, we have no doubt. Who they were really isn't clear. What they were doing and what they were armed with really isn't clear. But we do know that there were a few deaths of people being shot. And, you'd have to be insane not to think that there's a connection between those two. But again, it seems all completely shrouded in mystery. And the news cycle there just absolutely turned over and moved on.
Yeah, like all that talk in that week or so around those incidents of police reform and having more community-style policing.
Yeah, what's going on there?
Now, okay, maybe somebody might make the point that because it is out of the news cycle, but it's still happening behind the scenes. But is it? I have a feeling it might be off the table now because everyone's forgotten about it, which could be
But also there's other deeper things. I mean, just prosecutions, Brendan. Is anybody going to be? Are these crimes being investigated? We're talking about dead people here. And I think, again, what's really, really interesting is if we look at the contrast between how this was treated and maybe the demonstrations of last year, which was in the news cycle for a long old time, rightly so. I'm not saying that there's a competition here. It's just really interesting that this seems to pass so much quicker. If we look at the shootings of children in Cauca, in Nariño, again, far more coverage and a lower death toll, but a lot more coverage and a lot more anguish. And it's I think I said this at the time when we were on air. I suspect that a lot of this is connected to who was in that protest. Those protests weren't, Mamerto-style people. This was barrio kids. This was a real, genuine, popular howl of anger. And I think that put the police pretty much on edge in a way that maybe it doesn't when they think, well, these are some mamertos, some hippies. We know where we stand with these people. We know how far we can push them. They're students, blah, blah, blah. We know what we're doing. I wonder if they looked at that. Once Kais started burning, they thought, hang on, we don't have control of this. We need to reassert control and quickly. Bizarre. Very bizarre.
Yeah, excuse me. Very interesting point. And of course, the fact that it was, as you said, the kind of the normal people from the barrios, if I can use that term, the middle class media here were probably quick to let it go as well.
Yes, absolutely, and I think that's the other side of the coin. Absolutely, that I think there's an incredible amount of prejudice. I mean, if you see how quickly and how lightly, actually, a lot of the sort of people I talk to who profess to be liberals, who profess often to be working class themselves, I think somewhat dubiously, but a lot of those people, absolutely, the way they'll drop words like "ñero" into conversation, as though this is, obvio, uneducated ñeros. Really dismissive, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah, and some of them probably think, they're getting their comeuppance anyway. They probably stole my mobile phone and X, Y, and Z. So that is an element to it. Unfortunately, that's the case. Now, again, the undercurrent in all of this year is COVID-19. So there were maybe a COVID fatigue kicked in on top of that. But, well, I guess we're only just another protest away from seeing the magnitude of, has there been any serious thought by the government and the administration, the powers that be here, to look at reform, or has it just been completely kicked to touch? We'll find out, I think, whenever another incident comes up. Has there anything been done? But we should see. The economy, Ollie, obviously has taken a massive hit, but we were saying as well yesterday when we do plan this show, guys, when we had our little powwow brainstorming session. But there's obviously been some. We don't want to use the term winners, but some people who haven't fared too badly at all. Indeed, they might actually be in a financially better position today than they were at this time last year. Certainly, the big players in this country, if Amazon and all that are doing well in the States, but you'd have to say Éxito, and I'd also throw in Bavaria. I would be very surprised if Bavaria has seen sales decline this year. That's kind of the last thing to go in a crisis would be beer sales. So there have been people who have done pretty well out of this, but maybe not the people you'd like to see do well out of it.
Yeah, I mean, what we talked about, I think, at great length between us, because we share these concerns. But it's very much, I think, there's a massive divide in how big and what we call here BIMs or small and medium SMEs, I think we would say in English, small and medium size enterprises just been left to the wolves. And, your big players who already had, and, who have always been treated in a way that's, there are a few countries on earth, I think, that, everyone says they hate monopolies, but then, governments almost go out of their way to make life difficult for small operators and allow larger ones to act with impunity. Colombia is no different. So you'll see people like, I'm sure Home Center and Falabella, not necessarily Colombian companies, but big companies in Colombia. They, I would assume they're doing roaring business. Yeah. Rappi, of course, will have done very well. And notice the Rappi Tenderos won't have done particularly well. I mean, I'm sure they're not. I'm sure many of them are in it better. But the basic thing underpinning Rappi is that they hire far too many riders, so that none of their riders do particularly well. But the system can deal with it, so the customer gets a good response, often directly at the expense of the workers. And absolutely, Rappi have just continued along with that.
Yeah. I see Walter's written in saying the banks, of course, the banks have probably done pretty well. And in fairness, in the richer Western world, some people, like, they have more savings now, so that's also tapping into the banks. I just want to say, though, kind of an observation. Obviously, you've got the headline figures in terms of recession, unemployment at record high levels, especially for women as well. But looking in the neighborhoods and in the estratos or unos, we mentioned this in earlier shows, of lots of new businesses opening up, particularly in fruit and veg and in the staples. So I was going to say, if one was to just kind of wander in, you might think, well, they're not doing too badly here. Superficially anyway, and perhaps anecdotally, I don't hear people going, oh, it's really bad. I've spoken to a few tienda owners, okay, they say sales are down, but it's not like they're at death's door in that sense. But of course, there are people who own businesses in the first place. That already puts them perhaps in a privileged position.
Well, I think this is one of the things that we're going to see a really big difference in countries like Colombia and in countries like Ireland or the UK, in that a lot of the business that's been lost in England just won't come back. Shops will have closed, and those shops now are basically, in a couple of years they'll be demolished and there'll be an apartment block in their place. I doubt that's going to happen in Colombia. The barriers to entry into the market are incredibly low in Colombia, which is why you see all these, you've always seen businesses popping up all over the place. That's not unusual at all in Colombia. So I'll give you a quick example. If you look down on the 45, a year ago, we did an article on craft beer pubs and tap houses. on the 45, and we featured 14 different places. Of those, only I think 4 are still in operation. All of the rest have died. However, 3 of those venues opened up, I mean, as early as July, August. The business simply reopened with another, with a new owner and a new direction. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if through the next, I mean, certainly the restaurants I've seen that have closed around the corner from me, I have no doubt that there'll be new restaurants springing up in their place in 2-3 months.
Yeah, I think there's a danger, and of course it would suit my narrative, as you well know, and people who've read my blog. I've been critical of lockdown measures, and to use my word of the year, the monomania with coronavirus. I know you don't like me using that, Ollie, but people in these strata, that your working class folk, a lot of my friends who live basically from week to week at best. But they've been working pretty constantly. They're all in construction.
Yeah, so, construction's ploughing along, yeah.
Yes, yeah, so there could be a case that once the economy gets back to something resembling normality, which it slowly seems to be, and we hope that when the vaccine comes along early next year, Duque will hold you to that things will return to that normal far more quickly. But then we might see a spending spree, perhaps, or like this big relief. Because as I said, it suits my narrative to say, no, this is terrible, the lockdowns, and we're going to be counting the cost of all these measures for years to come. But maybe we'll have a big bounce like the Roaring '20s in the 1920s.
Yeah, and actually, let's not forget the Pollyannas that we had in sort of March, April when the lockdown started. We had obviously the red flags and the red cloths hanging from windows, and there was a lot of people sort of saying, it's going to be an economic whirlwind, it's going to be worse than the virus, it's going to be devastating, there's going to be riots, there'll be people starving in the streets, and really none of that's come to pass. Now, perhaps that's because people are living off of savings, perhaps it's because quite a lot of Colombians, a surprisingly high number of Colombians compared to some economies, are in the position of owning their own homes, for example, so they can just turtle in a little bit and spend less money and so forth. But like you say, a lot of jobs haven't really gone away. Construction's ploughed along as normal. There doesn't seem to be the economic devastation, as you say, which was predicted.
Yeah. Okay, well, one final point, because we're running out of time here. There is a lot to cover. But I would say the biggest losers, sorry to use that phrase, but those who are going to be badly affected, it would seem from my point of view anyway, are those who go to the public schools, because the vast majority of them, from what I can see around this neck of the woods of Bogotá, have not returned to classes. So basically, they've been out of school for a year. Now, I will put the alternative argument to that the level of education that they were getting in those public schools was so low that actually won't have a major effect on their long-term prospects. Discuss, Oli.
Well, I mean, I suspect it will, Brendan, potentially, just for one reason, as we mentioned before. The quality of education they receive or don't receive is neither here nor there. What they need is their little diploma. Whether they do anything to get that is neither here nor there. So I wonder if that'll be an issue. I suspect it will be fudged. I'm very worried by the number of children that I've seen, when I'm walking around, walking the dogs, doing shopping, whatever, I'm worried by the amount of times I've seen children out on the street looking at their phone, and there's very obviously a teacher at the other end of it. And the question there is, people, for whatever reason, and I really want to be clear that I don't necessarily blame parents for this. I suspect quite a few families aren't in the position where they can leave children at home, but it certainly seems clear that a lot of children just can't do classes at home for whatever reason. That the family can't just we say in England that school has basically become childcare, and I think that's true for quite a few people in Colombia also.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I just know a family here in the barrio that I socialize in from time to time, that they've just sent the kids off to Garagoa for the last few months. Now, whether they're getting any education there, I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, that's another thing. I mean, even in a liberal university, you know, we've plenty of students that have gone back to small pueblos, and there's just no connection. There's no way, you know, there's no reliable connection. They're just in and out of the meeting constantly, you know, and it's very difficult for us to know how to morally balance that, because they're not receiving the education. Equally, you can make a good argument that says it's not really their fault. But then what do? Do we allow people to graduate without having received the education, or do we drop standards? It's a real bind to be in. I don't think there are easy answers, Brendan. I think one of the things that's quite important about COVID is that people they're always looking for easy answers, and I don't think there really are any here.
No, and I think that's a fine point to leave it on, Ollie, and we do have to leave it there. Thanks, guys, for all the comments. And Angela duly noted about construction. She says isn't a bit of a bind, but we've got to leave it there. That is our lot. Next week we are going to gazing into our crystal ball and looking ahead to 2021. That's going to be far more difficult making predictions. But until next week, guys, thanks for watching. Ciao, ciao.
Bye bye.